Shabbat Shalom and welcome. This is Torah Study for Shabbos morning. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein here in rainy Southern California, joined by my dear friend and teacher, Rabbi Mark Gelman. Good morning, Mark. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Good morning.
Mark, this morning is the denouement, the climax of the story. This morning, we are leaving Egypt. Torah begins by saying this morning that we had to take the long way around because we weren't ready to face battle in the desert for the land. So God takes us the long way and we step at the Red Sea and we breathe for a moment, thinking maybe we're actually free. And we turn around and see Pharaoh's chariots screaming down the hillside behind us. The people scream to Moshe. It's amazing, by the way, as you well know, that even under the most dire circumstances, Jews will always find time for a beautifully articulated kvetch. Death is coming from behind, but they turn to him and they say in beautiful poetic soliloquy, were there not enough graves in Egypt? You brought us out here to desert to die. Poor Moshe, who is not a leader. Moshe was a shepherd. Sheep don't complain, but Jews, Moshe says, watch. He turns to God and says, God says, don't pray, don't scream, move. And he tells him to hold his arm over the sea. And we all saw this in the movie. He holds his arm over the sea, and whammo, miracles come. Except the tradition read the story very carefully and discovered all kinds of interesting quirks. In fact, very psychologically revealing quirks in the story. What does it mean to go b'toch hayam, into the sea? Into the sea. And what does that mean when we talk about standing in front of a moment of revelation, a moment of redemption? What does it take to be in that moment, Mark?
Right. There's two different phrases for the same act. V'yavasha b'toch hayam and b'toch hayam b'yavasha in verse 14, 22, and 59. And basically it says they walked into the sea on dry land. So the Medrash asks, why two different phrasings for the same thing? And the answer is that it's two different kinds of people who went into the sea. The first kind of person who went into the sea, B'toch hayam b'yavasha, was people like Nachshon ben Aminadav, and then they tell his story of a guy who walked into the water, forcing God's hands, went into above his nose, he's drowning in the sea, and God splits the sea to save Nachshon. So that first group we call the people who walked in to the sea because they had trust in a miracle. The second group, B'yavasha b'toch hayam, these were people who waited for it to get dry, and then they walked in.
Yeah, I won't be the first.
It won't be the first. And those are people who didn't have trust in a miracle. They saw the miracle and they believed in what they saw, not in what they trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And this, to me, is the whole meaning of the Exodus. It sets up for us two different kinds of people. One kind of person who approaches faith by saying, God, I don't know what's going to happen to me, my family, or the world, but I have trust that you are my rock, Suriva Goali, my rock and my salvation. I trust you. The second kind of person is a person who's waiting around for God to do something for us. And when it happens, they say, okay, if that happens, then I'll believe. This was Jacob as he was fleeing from the land. God, if you take care of me, you'll be my God.
Yeah.
That second group of people is the group of people you and I deal with the most. And that second group of people do not have faith. They have what we would call a suspension of faith in the face of actual production by God. And what that means is you can't go through life expecting God to fix things for you and present miracles in your life. But you can go through life expecting that you can trust God, who will accompany you through all the difficulties you face in life.
Mm.
The, the second is faith. The first is just a kind of magical thinking. And I think that's the lesson of the Holocaust. That's the lesson of the Exodus. That's the lesson of the founding of the State of Israel. In a way, it's the lesson of the founding of America. In every great human enterprise, there are people who trust and then move forward, and there are people who wait and move forward only after they can see some reason to trust.
Or they wait and they miss the moment.
Yes.
They miss the opportunity, right? So let's take this for a moment because that was a wonderful way to look at it. Take this for a moment from the macro to the micro. How many
Okay.
times have you and I met with young people, particularly young men, who will
Yes.
tell me, I love her, I want her in my life. I just don't know if I can marry her. I just don't because I don't know what it's going to be like tomorrow,
Right.
right? You remember, you know that
I
conversation?
can't commit.
I can't commit. I can't commit because who knows what tomorrow might bring, right? And you say to this young person, well, talk to me. Talk to me about your relationship. And you realize he's a very affectionate person and a loving person, except there's this terrible fear of tomorrow and a terrible fear that, you know, and there's almost a transactional quality to this.
Absolutely, there is.
What if I meet a better one tomorrow? Will I
Yeah.
regret having bought it today? Right? What if I find 2.0 tomorrow and I regret having spent my life with 1.1? So what do you say to that young man? What do you say to that person who says to you, I just can't take the step forward?
Well, you have to explain the difference between trust, which is faith, the heart of faith is trust, and scientific empirical proof. Faith and trust are not proof.
Hmm.
They are beliefs. They are forms of belief, and they are formed upon our need to believe that everything will be okay, or our belief that our love for this person is true. And that's what faith and love and trust are all about. But the problem, I think, that I have never been able to solve in 50 years of teaching children as a rabbi, how do you convince people to have faith? How do you convince them to have trust when everything in their life is transactional?
Hmm.
I'll do this for you, you do this for me, and we'll see how it works out. I was sitting with a couple, true story, and doing the premarital interview, and the woman says to me, "Well, this is good. I think it's good, and it's a good starter marriage." And I had never heard the term,
Oh my God.
a
Yeah.
starter marriage, like a starter house.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Just like you said, maybe tomorrow something better will come along. And I realized that this was a woman with no faith, no trust. And so the question becomes for us as teachers, how do you teach trust? And I think the answer is you have to believe that we aren't here alone and that we are accompanied in this life and we are loved in this life by God. Once you believe that, you can have, you can love. This is a link that most rabbis don't make, I think. We talk to young couples who are about to be married, talk about love, but we don't ever link faith and love.
Hmm.
And faith and love are absolutely linked.
Right.
They're the same thing. And so we have to teach them you love someone the same reason you believe in God, because you believe that life has embedded within it hope. And unless you can link faith and love, you can't believe in God and you can't fall in love.
That's a beautiful statement. So we human beings have this marvelous capacity to imagine what could be.
Right.
And sometimes that's very powerful. It's always very powerful for us. I mean, you're driving and you know that the guy in the next lane could come over quickly. So you slow down and you drive defensively. You make certain rational decisions about how to care and protect and project what might be and forestall the risks that are obviously there. But then the question is, at a certain point, once you've made all of those calculations, are you still ready to move forward? And there's nothing in life that doesn't involve a certain amount of risk, right? There's always a balance between security and risk, okay? A bit between security and possibility, basically. If you want to be 100% secure in your life, stay home. Don't go no place. Stay in your easy chair because the moment you step out of the cocoon of that controlled environment, God knows what's going to happen. The things you will meet and the people you will meet. Life is that adventure. And you have to give up some of the security to engage in that adventure. But you take reasonable precautions. You spend, we always say, and a couple shows up, they've only known each other for 2 weeks and they want to get married. We would say, no, no, you guys need to really get to know each other better. You need to get to know yourself better. But a couple that's deeply attached to each other and has thought about what tomorrow's going to be and has foreseen where their life's going and have tackled problems already. Yeah, no one knows what tomorrow's going to bring, and yet we bless that marriage. We bless an enterprise where someone enters into a business or moves to a new home or starts a new country, right? Because having foreseen all of the possible risks, you don't know what else might be out there. And here your wonderful statement about believing that there's a God who's basically there for me. I'm going to turn it a little bit around, follow my teacher, Rabbi Schulweis, who would talk about the God within. The sense that I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I know that I can find the capacity to handle it. And when I attach myself to the person I love, what I'm saying is I will find a new love tomorrow, deeper love, a greater connection with this person because I need them, because I'm not me without them. But that's part of what this is. Jump in the sea, because if you don't, then you stay on the other side. That's what the story is really about. If you're not willing to have a little bit of faith, a little bit of trust, a little bit of that, giving up the guarantee of security and jump in the sea, you're not going to get to freedom on the other side. You will remain a slave to your fear, remain a slave to your narrow-minded sense of this, right?
Right. Look, the Medrash says, and this is a fascinating thing, rarely quoted, that they say only half of the Jews left Egypt.
A fifth, chamushim, it says.
Then they go argue and they argue, and it's chamushim.
20%. The other 80% said,
Maybe
yeah, we ain't believing that guy, Moses. No,
we got
sir.
garlic here, we've got grain here, and
Right.
we're not unhappy by being slaves.
Right. Because you see, slavery, as horrifying as it is, has one virtue for certain kinds of people. Every tomorrow is exactly like every yesterday. You don't have to worry about what tomorrow's going to bring. You don't have to worry about what kind of challenges and what kind of risks it's going to bring, what kind of vulnerability. Every tomorrow, as horrible as it is exactly like it is perfect security. And nobody can live with that if you want to be a fully developed soul. But that requires, as you said, a step into the water. And the water's cold, and the currents are strong, and the bottom is muddy, and you don't know if you're going to make it across. But you have to take a step because that's life.
Well, that's the thing. You don't have to take that choice.
You can
It's a
jump back.
choice. That's what makes it a real choice.
Right.
And that's why in Deuteronomy, B'chuchayim, choose life, is these are the two most important words in the Torah. Choose life. The
But
thing
wait,
that
wait,
I
wait.
want,
But choosing life. But wait, let me just stop you a second. The rest of the verse, I put before you life and death, good and evil. In other words, God recognizes I'm putting you in a situation of
choice.
choices. I'm putting you in a situation of risk. I'm putting you in a situation where there are no warranties. There's no guarantees, but you need to choose life. Otherwise, you stay stuck in Egypt. Now, go ahead, please.
Yeah, yeah. So what I was going to ask you is the whole move of your teacher and his teacher, Mordecai Kaplan, and the basic move of what we would call a non-theistic Judaism, of Judaism in which God is the spirit of the people, but not traditionally what Judaism understands God to be. And the foundation of Judaism is the people and its folk customs. How does how does Kaplan and all those Jews who just can't get around the fact that they don't believe in God, how do they justify hope? Because the Jewish people aren't going to support your hope. The Jewish people aren't going to come to you on the darkest day of your life and give you sustenance and love and succor in order to get through it. They're not going to do that. God does that. So tell me how you created Judaism with no God or a minimal God.
All right, so it's a very good question, and it's a very deep question, and it'll take us the rest of the month. Because I just taught this. I was teaching a class this last month on Rabbi Schulweis. It's his centenary this year. It's his 100th birthday. So celebrating his 100th birthday by learning his philosophy again. And for those who are interested, those lectures will be posted on the VBS website if you want to watch them and listen to them. Here, I got to tell you that Kaplan is more theistic than Schulweis. Kaplan,
Really?
yes. Kaplan's idea was that he asked the question, he said, I can't believe in a supernatural God
Right.
because science has taught us there's no such thing as supernatural. Nature occurs, nature's laws apply always. But he said, I'm looking for what the God belief does for people. And the God belief does for people, and this is your language, I think, that God is the power that makes for salvation, that my belief or my faith in a God, and I think your language is very close to his actually, is this understanding that there is something in the universe that moves us toward our best selves and moves history toward its redemption. And he really believed in this. He really believed that there was some, and I think it's based on a 19th century belief in progress as inevitable. And so Kaplan simply codified that into Jewish religious language and
You
said,
mean Dewey?
Dewey, and yes, that Dewey was Kaplan's teacher for his doctoral
Yeah.
degree. A process toward redemption, a process toward salvation that is slow but inevitable, right? The
What
arc
is
of
its nature? What is its nature? Is it
he's
it's
not
not
going to
supernatural?
right. He doesn't argue what the metaphysics of it are. He just says we believe in it. He doesn't have any taste for metaphysics. Okay. Schulweis, by contrast, of course, is born in 1925. He comes of age during the Holocaust. He lives here in America, but he lives in a very deeply Jewish environment in New York where everyone has relatives who have been decimated by the Holocaust. Schulweis can't even believe in that because the Holocaust has beat it out of him, has beat out an idea that somehow progress, somehow redemption is inevitable. And so Schulweis, it's one of the things I criticized him on in my book. But what Schulweis would say is the following, that there is something in the world which pushes people toward the good. He called it, he used the two names of God. Elohim is the God of nature who is amoral. It's when you see a great sunset and you say, what a creation. Creation is amoral. Science, nature is amoral. But there's something called Adonai, which is the power of transformation. And that's located in us. And when Schulweis looks for Adonai, he finds it everywhere. Specifically, that's the reason why he celebrated Christian rescuers of Jews during the Holocaust. Because he said, even in the very darkest moment in history, there were people who moved to do the right thing, moved to be compassionate, merciful, kind, generous, nurturing, and therefore he could believe that somehow planted within the human soul there's a spark of what he called God. That spark of God is what pushes people to do self-sacrificing acts of moral courage, of moral goodness. And he really believed in that. And the task of faith, the task of rather religion, is to cultivate that within us so that we too become heroes. We too become. So he's not going to believe in the God that you believe in, Mark, a God who comes to be with you in moments of darkness. He's going to say, yes, there, God does come to me with moment of darkness through my community, through the friends who come to hold my hand, and the family that comes to protect me, and the doctors who come to heal me, and the nurses who share compassion. That is an expression of God in the world. Now, I know that's not satisfying to someone who's a theist, but I just want you to understand that's what he believes in.
No, I understand that.
Well, thank you.
And I respect that. And there's a challenge to people on my side who are more traditionally theistic. And that challenge is, look, what what do you think a miracle really is? Do you really think that God is going to split a Red Sea down the middle? Do you think that that's possible in a world where olam kamin go no heg, the world goes according to its own laws?
Mhm.
And if you don't believe that such a thing is possible because it violates the laws of nature and nature's God, what constitutes a miracle? I mean, we pray for people who are sick. What are we praying for? Are we praying that all of a sudden an illness which has no cure is all of a sudden cured through spontaneous remission? I just did research on the study at Harvard and others of does prayer heal people?
Mm.
And of course they discover, no surprise, that it doesn't. But the question becomes, what can you pray for if you can't pray for God coming and intervening in your illness and giving you health again? And the answer is, and I've just prayed this prayer recently, dear God, give my physicians the wisdom to heal me. I'm not asking for you to take a disease and poof, make it go away, because that's foolish. That's magical thinking. But what I am asking is that the doctors who come to attend to me should have wisdom, and that wisdom does come from you. And I pray that they will use their wisdom to heal me, because even though it says in the Torah, Ani Adonai Rofecha, I am the Lord your healer, as Maimonides says, the physician is the hand of God.
Mm.
So you can pray for natural events like good doctors, good healing, good information, AI assisted diagnosis, as we'll see in the future. You
Right.
could pray for all of that, and that's all miraculous. But it isn't supernatural. And in that little open area between the supernatural and the natural, the divinely inspired natural,
Hmm.
in that little opening is where God lives.
And that's beautiful. I'll tell you how I think about this. When we say that prayer in synagogue, we ask God for rifuat hanefesh, rifuat haguf. To me, that's remarkable. Rifuat hanefesh means healing of the soul, the spirit. Rifuat haguf means healing of the body. Rifuat haguf, healing of the body, is biochemical. That's the doctor. That's the medicine. That's asking for cure. That's asking for my doctors to be able to figure out the diagnosis, attach the right prescription to it, and take care of me. Refuat HaNefesh is something different. I remember when I had this event when I was very, very sick.
Yeah,
And there were moments that you lose faith. You lose every, you want to just let it go. There's an exhaustion, there's the pain, there's the fear, there's the burden of the thing. And Rifuat HaNefesh is healing that. It's giving you back the courage to fight back, to fight the disease. It's giving, I remember, I had to go take chemotherapy every Monday afternoon, and I would get violently sick. And there were so many Mondays I just didn't want to go. And what does it take to tell that person, we're with you. You matter to us. You matter to the world. To heal the spirit, to push us forward, to want to get well, to want to fight the disease. That's Refuat HaNefesh. We control that. We can help. I remember again when I was sick, somebody calls me up from another city and said, I just heard your name in shul. They mentioned your name on the list of people we're praying for. I didn't know you were sick. How are you? What can I do for you? And I kept hearing that over and over again and realized I didn't know that I was as important as I guess I'm more important than I thought I was to lots and lots of people. And
you
that,
are.
and no, but that's a, you are too. I mean, that's a feeling that gives you a sense of, I need to fight this disease because I matter. I matter. It's to fight back hopelessness and despair and depression and fear, and all of that. That's the reason you say the prayer. So that again, it's not exactly theistic. I'm actually more metaphysical and more theistic than Rabbi Schulweis was because I was born a generation later, and I'm not as broken down by his by the Holocaust actually theologically as he was. He actually gave me some faith after the Holocaust because I still think that there are things in the world that push us toward healing and toward redemption. If we read this story, today's story, what does it take for a slave people who have been beaten and beaten and beaten and beaten to step into that water, to say yes to tomorrow, to imagine that I can be other than a slave, that I can imagine freedom, that I can imagine something else? That rifuat hanefesh, that cognitive, spiritual awakening and resurrection, that's the miracle. Whether it was a giant open sea or whether Moses just took us through a swamp and Pharaoh's chariots couldn't get through it because the bottom was muddy, that's not interesting to me. What it took for a slave to say yes to freedom and yes to tomorrow, that to me is the miracle.
Amen.
There you
Beautiful.
go. Well, Mark,
Beautiful.
thank you. I want you to feel better and come back and learn Torah with us. Thank you all for listening to us today. It is Shabbat Shira, the Sabbath when we cross the sea and we sing a song. So go look up a really powerful song. Mark, what's the most inspiring song you know?
Well, there's a prayer. There's a poem by my favorite poet, Mary Oliver, and it's my favorite poem, and it's about praying. Um, I'm reading it to you. Praying, it doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together and don't try to make them elaborate. Praying isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Let's pray and let's pray for redemption. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Take care. Have a good Shabbos.